encourage interdisciplinary and collaborative science. Part of that will be organizing and coordinating, better organizing collaboration and logistics and research support. In Canada, we have Northern Strategy. There's an underlying assumption that science and research is part of that, but we don't have a Northern science policy that would guide how those investments would take place. There have been some recent reviews and recommendations, but I think that's something we really need to push for as a community, or else we'll go through these pulses of support, but with pretty significant troughs in between. So internationally, the Arctic Council has taken the lead on this project called Sustaining Arctic Observing Networks. And I've got a few more copies of this at the back of the room. This is a project that Arctic Council ministers requested 2 years ago at their last ministerial meeting in Russia, in Salikar. And over the last 2 years, the international science organizations, the Arctic countries, the permanent participants, the indigenous organizations of Arctic Council, and non-Arctic states developed a set of recommendations for how to sustain Arctic observing networks. And last week at the Arctic Council ministerial meeting in Tromsø, Arctic Council ministers and permanent participants signed off again on a request for those same groups to implement sustained Arctic observing networks programs that bring together operational observing, ice services, weather services, groups like that, health surveillance, to bring together research observing organizations, and bring together community-based and traditional knowledge partners to coordinate their efforts, make the information accessible, and to use that to add value for societal benefit. So, at an international level anyway, there's an effort being made to try to find a mechanism for sustaining Arctic observing and many of the IPY programs. But of course, individual states signed on to that request, and one of the requests is that they sustain at the same level the work that is currently being supported, trying to avoid the sort of letdown of capacity and resources and training and knowledge over the next few years. That's at an international level. National level, we still need to figure out how we're going to organize ourselves. Organizations like the Canadian Polar Commission play a role, but they're once again in limbo. And how various federal agencies and departments work together. There's some lessons in IPY and we need to learn from those. And at the Northern Territorial, Provincial, Land Claims Organization level, there's some real opportunities to be much more engaged in the design and execution of science and research in the North. I think that's one of the things we've demonstrated in IPY, is that we can all work together. If we have a common pool of funding, so we can better coordinate our activities that we can access fairly and equitably, then these things can work. And IPY in Canada, at least, was a great experiment in making a pot of money available to the academic community, northern community, and government, scientists all at the same time. I hope the government can remember that this was, although we had problems in moving money around, and there were all sorts of issues, and Alana alluded to some of the obstacles of working with federal departments and ministers and things like that. I think we should be positive about this experience, because the alternative is to go back to separate silos of funding or lack of ability to coordinate funding. So at the team and individual level, I think the most important thing is to document our IPY accomplishments and the lessons learned. To make those available, even the things that we might not want to remember about IPY. Because it's those struggles that will help us to design the next program. So there's lots of reasons we should be optimistic. We've never had an opportunity like this before, and there's a risk, of course, that we fall back to the state of affairs before IPY. So IPY is just one program. It's not the way that we may end up doing things in the future, but I think there's a lot to be learned. And internationally, it's very heartening to see just what attention was paid to IPY. If you go to the IPY.org website right now, you'll see the report from the Mongolian IPY National Committee and the work that was done in Mongolia by indigenous peoples and scientists from various partners in Mongolia. We don't think of Mongolia as an IPY country, but they had a national committee and a program, and did some really interesting work on northern rivers. And in all of the other 63 partner countries of IPY, there are similar types of stories that we tell. So we need to make sure we tell our stories here and let people know what's accomplished. So IPY was international, but it does, at the end of the day, funnel down to what's done within smaller teams and sometimes at a more local level. But I just want to make sure that we remember that we need to move that information in the other direction as well. And I think there'll be real value in doing that. That's all I was going to say, Greg, unless you wanted me to touch on something else. I do have one thing I'd like to do is to get Greg and Helmut up here. Helmut is sitting right here. Helmut, some of you may know, works for Government of Northwest Territories. He's also been a member of the Canadian National Committee for IPY since the very beginning of time, a long time ago, and has done an awful lot to bring together the agencies and scientists within the NWT to support IPY. And Greg is one of the leads on the IPY project, has also been recognized by the International Joint Committee, WMO and ICSU. And I just want to give you a couple of certificates to recognize that. Find an opportunity to get you up here.
Thanks very much.
So, yeah, thanks to you, but also to everyone. It's just not to single people out, but where the Joint Committee has a contact to a project and to people who played a role in helping to kick this thing off, they felt they wanted to really recognize that and thank you. But I think what you'll probably say is it's